Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar Magic the Gathering video. This one is going to be going over all the cards in detail that we got revealed from IGN because they revealed the beginner box in full. So we have like 100 cards to go through, but I also want to really focus on this one because for Avatar fans, this is the beginner box. This is the starter deck product basically for Avatar Magic. If you are buying anything from the Avatar set, this is probably the product you should be buying if you want to try out, just play. If you want a quick easy collection that features a bunch of the main characters, this is also the one to go for, because everything else is ultimately packs, there's randomness to it. This is the only thing where it's just a set group of cards. So and especially the pricing on this one, this is the only, I think, kind of value for money product really among all the Avatar stuff. So this is why I'm really going to go in depth on this one in particular. So yeah, we're talking about the beginner box as we've seen before. Here's what it looks like, and then here's a rough example of like everything as it is when you open it out. You do get the kind of play mats. It's nothing fancy, it's just kind of a fold out play mat. You get some like cardboard tokens. You do get 2 spin down counters to track your life, and there's like manuals, specifically two manuals for the Aang and Zuko tutorial decks to play through your first ever game of Magic. So you can come into this like as a complete beginner and get that kind of benefit of the kind of full-on tutorial like stacked deck thing, or you can just come in like I know what to play and you just have 10 kind of jumpstart decks, because that's the important thing to get across with the beginner box, is that it's effectively a jumpstart starter product. This is 10 jumpstart packs effectively, set groupings. Every version of this comes with the same stuff, but you can add onto it with the jumpstart boosters if you want to make a bigger kind of box of, you know, board game type dynamic for Avatar. So let's get into this. IGN obviously did the reveal. I would definitely recommend watching the video because there's a few extra things compared to just going through the image gallery, which we will go through, but if you actually watch the video, you get a look at some of the stuff kind of inside. So, for example, the tutorial deck, you'll note it says here, do not shuffle, Aang deck. This is if you want to play through that kind of scripted game. It tells you, like, here's what your hand will be. Here's what you should do on your first turn to play through this game and get a sense of, I suppose, doing a little bit of everything so you know what to do. Then it guides you through the Zuko turn and like what you should do, what your opponent should do. Here's what it looks like when you open up the box. I think this is after he's gone through everything, opened it up, and then kind of put it back in the box. So you can see that the box is also like storage for this as like a board game style thing. So you can see there is dividers to keep all 10 of the decks separate from each other, so you can mix and match as you kind of go back in. There are the spin down counters and the rest of the things. And again, I assume there's space where, like, perhaps if you, once you're done with a lot of the tutorial material, you can maybe get rid of them and you can put other jumpstart packs in there if you want to keep this together with all the jumpstart stuff. Then some of the stuff not in the card image gallery is a lot of the, say, like basic lands. They didn't actually show off just in the image gallery what the lands are and what the tokens are, but in the video you can actually see some of those tokens. So you can see the planes, the basic land planes, not full art, is the Western Air Temple with the upside down buildings, which is very cool. One of the tokens you can see here is a Kyoshi Warrior token. You'll note a lot of the cards make 1/1 white ally tokens, and here's one of them. And you can see he then splays out a group of 5 of them, and there's 5 different arts, at least for as far as we're aware now, for allies. So you can see there's like an ancient sun warrior here, which is very, very cool to see. An Earth Kingdom or Earthbender kind of ally. This is a Southern Water Tribe character here in the middle. I guess a freedom fighter here, and the Kyoshi Warrior. We'll see if there are any more, but I'm guessing there's just the 5 arts for those decks. So I guess if you want to, you know, you can actually have your allies be very thematic depending on what your deck is doing, and that's interesting. There will be other tokens as well, because there's mentions of like food tokens on certain cards. One of them mentions making a spirit token, and we'll see what other tokens get used over the course of the game. He opens up the manual and you'll see this is where you do actually get the reveal of all 5 of the basic lands. I do believe they will have multiple arts, but at least in this product, it seems like you're only given one of the arts. So you can see it's like Western Air Temple, the island is Wolf Cove, like where Sokka and Katara are from. The forest is definitely the forest from the episode Jet. Can't quite make out the swamp, and the mountain, I guess, is like a kind of fire temple in the mountains, I think. Interestingly, if you look down here at the non-basic lands, one of them is what we know. This is in the image gallery. This card here is a spirit related, based on the image, spirit related. I can't make out what the text is for the title of the card, but it does come across as, I'm not sure if it's just like not focused or they've actually blurred it in the video, but I don't think you can at all make out what the effect text says, even when you scroll through the video. So they're maybe hiding what that does, which is kind of interesting. And then I'll also mention this card up here is, I don't think it's part of the beginner box, so it is technically kind of a new card reveal. I can just about make out, I think, what it says. It's Earthbending Student. I think it's 1 in a green or 2 in a green for a 1/3 kind of Earthbender Student. And when it comes in, it Earthbend 2. So you turn one of your lands into a creature that has 2+1/+1 counters on it. I think it just has some flavor text at the bottom, so it's more of a basic card, but it's just cool that there are a few little reveals like that going on there. But otherwise, let's get into the card image gallery. So I went over the kind of groupings of these cards in my video yesterday, just as a quick overview. But again, this is what it's made up of. It's 10 Jumpstart half decks. So the Aang tutorial deck, you can see here, has these 12 individual cards plus 8 planes. So you do get the 8 basic lands with this as well. They just don't list them here. But of course, each one of these decks is 20 cards. You have to keep that in mind. We'll go through these cards in detail later on. The Zuko tutorial deck, again, is these 12 cards, and there will also be 8 mountains because it's a red deck. You go to the allies, and interestingly here, there are 13 cards because you do get a non-basic land. You get a thriving, in this case, heath. And this is a special kind of group of lands that basically allow you to be in the color that the deck is focused on, but then you get to choose another color. So they're perfect for Jumpstart, where you're going to mix 2 of these packs together. So when you play this card, you basically just choose the color of the other Jumpstart pack that you've kind of linked together with it. So if it's red, you just choose red for this, and then it will tap for, I guess, white and red. You'll see these as we go forward. Here's a spells focused deck with Paku, and you can see you get Thriving Isle in this case. Waterbending deck. There's also attacking. This is the kind of black focus deck, but then there's also this kind of black with a little bit of green. Counters as more of a long feng deck. We have Firebending, and we also have Earthbending here. As well as big creatures. So these are the themes that are in the Jumpstart box. So it's a pretty nice selection, I would say, overall. So we'll go through it here. So first of all, we get the theme card for the Aang tutorial deck. Now, I don't think in the video we see the back of these, but I believe on the back of these cards, they do tell you the kind of lineup of what cards are in Aang's tutorial. So if you do kind of lose track of where your cards are, mixing them together, you can refer to the back of this card to see what is in Aang's tutorial, so you can reorganize your box. But also they're kind of almost like full art cards by themselves. Note as well, if you get a Jumpstart pack, a booster pack, you'll get a theme card depending on what theme you get there. So it's technically another group of cards, though as you can see straight away here, this is the same art that is used on the Aang card here. But yeah, let's start off. So we have Aang Air Nomad, 3 generic mana and 2 white mana for a 5/4 Aang. And it's pretty basic. It's flying, vigilance, and other creatures you control have vigilance. The reminder text is there. Flying can't be blocked except by creatures with flying or reach. So it's just kind of battle evasion type thing. And vigilance is attacking doesn't cause this creature to tap. So again, the idea is usually in Magic, when you attack with a creature, you tap it sideways to designate that you're attacking. And then when it goes to your opponent's turn, because it's tapped, this isn't a blocker. You have to be active to block. Whereas vigilance means you attack face up and on your opponent's turn you can also choose to block as well. So it allows you to be active on kind of both turns, and he also does this for your other characters. 5 mana means it comes in a little bit later in the game, so later on a lot of your things will have vigilance. Aang's Defense is the next card. It's an instant, so it's 1 white mana for target blocking creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn and draw a card. So again, you can see the idea is with this deck is that it's very much about doing stuff while you're blocking and while you're attacking, but it's a focus on sort of offense and defense, maybe a little bit more focused on defense with this card. So cool. And then the art, you know, representing the fight in Bottom of the Water Tribe, I think this is super cool. Aardvar a sloth here as one of the hybrid animals is nice, highlighting some of the kind of common cards and stuff like that. So 3 and a white for a 3/3 creature with lifelink. So lifelink is just damage you deal causes you to gain that much life. So if you're on 20 life and you attack with this, you will go up by 3, so you'll go up to 23, and so on. And that's damage dealt to creatures or directly to your opponent. So it's a nice ability to keep your life active, and it's one of the things that white likes to do as well. Gaining life is a big thing for white. I'll also mention at this point, keep a note for all of these cards on if it is in terms of a set code, TLE or TLA. TLA is the main set, as in from booster packs, that's what you'll get those cards from. TLE is more specifically the kind of extra or eternal kind of set, and it is more the cards that are exclusive for the beginner box and exclusive for Jumpstart. And you won't, I think, regularly find these cards in booster packs. There's some TLE stuff because if I remember correctly, these cards, the ones that represent each episode, the source material cards that are reprints, you can get these in play booster packs, but they're kind of rare, and these are TLE cards as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. The TLE cards are kind of designed for Jumpstart and so on, but remember that the TLA cards will be designed more for the draft environment as well as like standard and stuff like that. So the important, I think, thing to remember for this is that if we're getting our first version of a character in TLE, it probably means that there is going to be another version of that character as like TLA. So you'll see that, like, we'll see a King Boomy card later on, which is our first King Boomy, but I think it's a TLE card. So we still have to get our main set Boomy, which might be a little bit different, maybe slightly more flavorful, but we'll keep going. Appa, Aang's companion, 3 and a white for a 2/4 bison, has flying as you would expect, and when Appa attacks, another target attacking creature without flying gains flying. So he allows you to give your, I suppose, non-Aang creatures flying, because Aang already has flying, notably the Aardvark Sloth doesn't, and as we'll go through, there's a Katara, there's a Sokka in this deck, you can give them flying, which is just very solid and another thing that white likes to do. Here's a Katara in white, 4 and a white for a 2/3, it has lifelink, and also when Katara enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. So she doesn't get one herself, but she gives it to everything else. And she's the healer, so lifelink is how she's going to heal you. That's pretty nice. And then the idea is that, like, you give her vigilance with the Aang, potentially you give her flying with Appa, and that's how you get kind of Katara into play. Momo, Rambunctious Rascal, 3 mana for a 1/1 Momo. Flying, of course, so that's not great immediately. 3 for a 1/1 flyer. When he enters, he deals 4 damage to target tapped creature an opponent controls. So straight away, that's pretty nice, but you have to make sure to time playing this card correctly, because if they don't have a tapped creature, playing this without getting that bonus is not really great. So you want to come in and take something out immediately, and that is a lot. Like 4 damage from a 3 mana creature is pretty nice. Like, you will probably kill most anything that's on the field. Especially in Jumpstart, where like there's not too many things that have like that much toughness. That makes a lot of sense. Next, this is our first TLA card, so this will also be available in booster packs. So Path to Redemption, 1 and a white for an enchantment aura. You enchant creature, so you can attach it to a creature. That creature cannot attack or block. Then you can pay 5 mana. You can also sacrifice Path to Redemption. Then you exile the enchanted creature and you create a 1/1 white ally creature token, and you can only activate this effect during your turn. So the idea here, of course, is straight away, you enchant one of your opponent's creatures. They're the villain. You are redeeming one of their creatures onto your side of the board. That's what this card is trying to do. You make it so that they move away from their evil ways, so that they're not attacking you or doing anything to harm you. They're just there. And then you choose by paying the mana to redeem them, quote unquote. And so yeah, you sacrifice this, you pay your mana, you kill what they were before effectively, and you bring them over to your side of the board as a 1/1 kind of heroic, creature token, type thing. It's very flavorful. It's maybe a little slow and more about flavor, but it's still kind of cool and interesting. It's a way to get rid of something in the typical way white in Magic gets rid of things, which is in sort of like slightly roundabout ways, where you're exiling it as long as this card remains on the field type thing. That's what Airbending also kind of does as well. Razor Rings, also a TLA card, 1 and a white for an instant. It deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature, and you gain life equal to the excess damage dealt. So the idea there being that if you do 4 damage to something that only has 3 toughness, the 1 extra damage is a life that you gain. And again, if you kill something with 1 toughness, you get 3 life. That sort of idea. But note that you have to do this in the middle of combat while attacking and blocking is going on. But still, super cool art of Katara versus Hugh here in the with the Swamp Monster. And one of the coolest waterbending attacks in the series in my mind, when she starts slicing it up. That's a very cool scene. Otter Penguin here, so 3 mana for a 2/3 with a very simple effect. Pay 3 mana, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So you can continue to do that. If you have the mana, you can do that multiple times in a turn, but the idea, I guess, typically is that each turn it's gaining momentum as it sleds down the hill, so it gets bigger and bigger, which is a fun kind of play pattern, I think. But again, an idea of one of the more basic cards in the set, of just like, yeah, a lot of your early stuff is probably going to be kind of generic water soldier, earth soldier, the various animals, and then you build up to the characters, of course. Sokka, Wolf Cove's Protector, 3 mana for a 3/3 with vigilance. Interestingly, of course, the idea with the commander format is, of course, you use legendary creatures. This really doesn't feel like one you would ever want to use as your commander, just because it doesn't really do anything outside of just having vigilance itself. It's nice enough as a basic Sokka, and it's fitting for this deck, but like there's not much to it otherwise. But yeah, it's a TLE card, kind of, I suppose, built more for this deck, quote unquote. Then we have Tundra Wall, which is, I think, very fun. 1 and a white for a 0/4 wall with Defender. So it's in the Southern Water Tribe. It's the Wolf Cove Snow Fort. Yeah, it can't attack. That's the whole point of it. It's just a lot of toughness for a low mana cost. It's just meant to be out there blocking, saving your life total, allowing you to build up other stuff. But very fun. I love the little Sokka up here because the focus of the creature is the wall itself. Wolf Cove Villager, I think, is the last card in this half deck. So 1 mana for a 2/2 human peasant. This creature enters tapped. Now the reason it has a negative effect, slowing you down, is just because it's overstated for its cost. 1 mana for a 2/2 is above typical rate, so you have to gain a little bit of a downside for that. And I also love the flavor text here, just referring to, the mention of Wolf Cove, something that was revealed only a few years back, just getting the name of the kind of Southern Water Tribe capital. It's just a fun little piece of flavor text. The right use of flavor text. We'll move into the Zuko tutorial, and you'll see with the first card immediately the point I was making with the previous card. This is 2 mana for a 2/2 with no effect. That's the typical rate, quote unquote. So you can see that's why this one needed a little bit of a downside, because it's 1 mana for a 2/2, where it's meant to be kind of 2 mana for a 2/2. So yeah, that's the Capital Guard. The Dragon Moose is 4 mana for a 3/3 Dragon Elk with haste. Haste just means when it comes onto the battlefield, it can attack immediately. You typically, if something doesn't have haste, have to wait a turn because of summoning sickness, which is typically what most creatures have. Next turn round you can do attacking, but haste allows you to attack immediately. So that is fun, and another use of the animals. Very nice. Here's your classic red damage dealing spell, Explosive Shot, 2 mana for a sorcery. It deals 4 damage to target creature. So note it's specifically a creature, not creature or player. But 4 damage is pretty nice. Love the long shot art of him blowing up the blasting jelly barrels. Very cool to see. I actually really am excited to see what they do with the long shot card, which I assume we will get one in the set. Jet as well, actually. Fire Nation Soldier, 3 for a 3/2 with haste. So you can see what this deck is trying to do in comparison to the white deck, the 2 tutorial decks. They're very sort of combat focused, but in different ways. The air deck is more about kind of like vigilance, so keeping up your defenses. It's about spells that boost you on attacking and defending. Whereas the fire deck is more about attacking quickly and just boosting your damage, as we'll see. As well as a little bit of tokens as well. Fire Nation Conquest, 3 mana for an enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+0. So just a boost across the board by +1. Exactly what you want to do. And this is all meant to be representative of early ATLA, basically representing the first 2 episodes, which I think is quite clever. Here's the Iroh. 3 mana for a 2/2. When Iroh attacks, attacking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. So the idea, of course, would be that you maybe have this on the board and Iroh, and all of a sudden everything's got +1 already, but then they get +1/+1 when they attack, and suddenly your army is actually doing quite a lot of damage. The Komodo Rhino shows you the other side of the deck, where it's trying to do trample damage as well. So 4 mana for a 5/2, and trample, of course, is that when you attack a creature, excess combat damage goes to the player. So if you kill something that has 3 toughness, the extra 2 power here on the Komodo Rhino is taken from your opponent's life. So that the power doesn't go to waste, basically. And this does something very in line with that, which is basically it feels like it's quote unquote putting one of your other characters on top of a Komodo Rhino. So they gain +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn, allowing them to do kind of that rollover damage. Warship Scout, 1 mana for a 2/1. So you can see here it's okay for 1 mana to have that slight extra power boost because only 1 toughness, but still it's decent. Zhao, the Seething Flame, for 5 mana for a 5/5 menace, and menace can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. So Zhao wants to kind of get through, and you can see that the red deck is all about trying to make blocking sort of difficult with the power boosts, and as we'll see with this Zuko, also kind of going wide as well, just having a lot of creatures. So the Zuko kind of equivalent to the Aang is Zuko Avatar Hunter, 5 mana for a 4/5 with reach. So the idea there is, of course, he has reach, so he can block Aang, who has flying. So that's clever. And then whenever you cast a red spell, create a 2/2 red soldier creature token. So he creates like a Fire Nation soldier. And again, a red spell just means anything that's red. Because it's magic, every red card is considered a spell, whether it be a creature, instant, sorcery, or anything like that. So that's actually quite good. I made the point earlier on about which of these is like suited to actually be a decent commander for a commander deck. This actually seems like a solid fundamentals commander where like it's a basic effect, but that's doing stuff that you kind of want to do. It's just, okay, it's got the reach, and then just any red spell, 2/2 tokens, like not even like 1/1s, 2/2s, and there's no like once per turn or anything like that on it, so it does lock you into a mono red if you do that, but still, you'd probably have to, I guess, use cards from outside the Avatar set to make it look really good, but, interesting. Zuko's offense, so this is the equivalent to Aang's defense. So you can see these two are designed to work kind of perfectly together. So red mana, sorcery, Zuko's offense deals 2 damage to any target. So this is one where you can choose to hit a creature or your opponent directly. And it's the exact opposite in the art as well, so that's clever. So then we move into the first non intro tutorial deck. This is allies, so it's in white. You can see here creatures work together, and the art that they show here, of course, is the freedom fighters, including Jet, Sneers, Longshot, Smellerbee, Pipsqueak, the Duke. Actually, Sneers isn't here. Poor Sneers. But anyway, we'll see if they cover the whole freedom fighter gang when we get to it. So Aang the Last Airbender. So they actually teased this card on the stream, if you remember correctly. They showed us, they showed us the art for Aang the Last Airbender. Little did we know that they were actually going to reveal the card not that long afterwards. So another Aang once again. How many is it at this point? Aang the Last Airbender, 4 mana for a 3/2, has flying. When Aang enters, airbend up to one other target non-land permanent. Whenever you cast a lesson spell, Aang gains lifelink until end of turn. So it leans into 2 of the main mechanics of the Avatar set, which is airbending as a mechanic, and also the idea of characters gaining benefits from lessons happening. So in this case, Aang is allowed to airbend. His specific airbending targets just any target non-land permanent, so opponent or yourself, depending on which way you want to do it. Do you want to slow your opponent down, or do you want to sort of save one of your own characters, or like try to trigger their effect again type thing to gain benefits? And then you gain lifelink, which again is attacking and gaining life from doing that attacking whenever a lesson spell is cast. So that seems pretty nice. That's your kind of solid Aang that's actually kind of doing some nice stuff. And you can see it's the TLA one, so this is just an uncommon from the main set. So love the art though. Airbending lesson, so we obviously know that we've seen I think already Earthbending lesson, and have we seen some of the others? Either way, I think we know that there's a bending lesson for all characters. So here's the airbending one. 3 mana for a lesson. Airbend target non-land permanent and draw a card. So that's pretty nice. This is your basic way to do airbending, but also to draw a card. I guess it highlights that airbending is more into the card draw more than anything, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I love this one with Monkey Atso in it. Excited to see how they do him. I'm guessing he probably would be a saga, like Sozin is as a character kind of from the past. But we'll see how they go about doing a Gyatso card in full. Allied Teamwork. So this is kind of the card from the theme card. So 3 mana. When it enters, create a 1/1 white ally creature token, and allies you control get +1/+1. Okay, so that's pretty nice. You create your token, and all allies get +1/+1. So I'm pretty sure all the creatures in this set, in this pack, are allies. So yeah, the Aang is an ally. He gets the +1/+1. The token gets the +1/+1. And of course, you for this deck, I'm guessing you want to use the Freedom Fighter tokens primarily, but we'll go on. Next is the card we've seen before, Allied Enthusiasts. The main thing with this one is just to note that, whenever an ally you control enters, this one gets +1/+1 counters. So if you continue to make tokens, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and actually ends up becoming a bit of a threat if you really lean into it, which is nice. Glider Kids is new, so there are a couple of cards actually referencing the Northern Air Temple episode. So this one is 3 mana for 2/3 flying, and when it enters, you scry 1. And you get to look at the top card of your library and put it on the bottom if you don't want it. Basically, if you like the look of it, keep it there. If not, you can put it on the bottom. So very solid basic card. But if you want more flyers, if you want to build a white flying deck, of course, this seems decent enough. Zhongzhong's Deserters. So 1 and a white for a 1/2. When it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it's really showing you with a lot of these basics, these are the things that white is doing. There's a bit of a focus on +1/+1 counters. You can do airbending. Ally stuff is also in white. That sort of idea. So that's solid. Kyoshi Warrior Guard is a vanilla card, so it's 1 and a white for a 2/3, and it just has flavor text. But I love the scene here. It's depicting the Kyoshi Warriors, including Suki, defending Appa in Appa's lost days towards the end. So very nice. Master Piandao, and again, this is a TLA card. So 5 mana for a 4/4 human warrior ally with first strike. So what first strike means is in combat, he deals his damage first. As in, if he's going to kill whatever's blocking him, he'll do that and he won't take the damage. So it just means he attacks first, and if he kills something, he doesn't take damage. If he doesn't, then he takes the damage. It just makes it like so that he's a little bit more difficult to deal with on the blocking side of things. Whenever Piandao attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. Reveal an ally, equipment, or lesson from among them, put it into your hand, and the rest go to the bottom. So he searches the top 4 cards of your deck, and you can get either an ally creature, an equipment card, or a lesson card, which I think makes a lot of sense. They're kind of, I suppose, leaning the Order of the White Lotus into the ally mechanic, but also he's the weapons expert, so he kind of, I suppose, wants you to get like a sword. But also he's a teacher, so you get a lesson as well. This is also very, very flavorful for Piandao. Mechanical Glider, artifact equipment. So it costs 1 mana, comes in. When it enters, immediately attach it to a target creature you control. So usually equipments don't have this text and you have to pay the equip cost, but this one allows you to immediately, for free, attach it to something, and it just gives something flying. So that's a quick, easy way to give something flying, which is nice. Otherwise, the equip cost is 2. So if your first character using this gets killed, you can then equip this to something else for 2, which is cool. Another path to redemption. You also get it in this deck. We actually saw this art on one of the walls at like San Diego Comic-Con, but here's the card. Rabaroo Troop, 5 mana for a 3/5 rabbit kangaroo with a landfall, which this ability just means it is going to be an effect that goes off every time a land comes into play. So in this case, it's whenever a land comes into play, this creature gains flying until end of turn, and you gain a life. With the idea there being that I guess this is making the Rabaroo hop. So you do a big jump, you gain a life. But it's also, interestingly here, a few cards have this as well. It's got Plains Cycling 2, which is basically just because it's a somewhat expensive creature. So you might be, if you draw this in your opening hand, you might not be able to cast it immediately or might not plan to. So instead of putting it in for 5, you can instead pay 2 and discard this card to search your deck for a Plains land and put it into your hand. So it's just a way to get a slightly better value out of this card if you're not quite ready to use it for its creature kind of version. So that's kind of nice there. First Suki card, so I was waiting for this one, so cool that we have it here, and it is from the main set, TLA. I do wonder, will there be another Suki? I'm assuming there probably will be. At the very least, I'm guessing there will be a Suki from the end of the series, when she's like working with the airship team like Sokka and Toph. But I do wonder, is there like a Kyoshi Warrior Suki that's maybe like a rare that does something different? But either way, we have... this is actually our first card that has this unique mana symbol here. So this is 2, and then it's got like split mana. So you can see it's a mix of green and white. So the idea here is that you can choose to pay green or white for each of these. So Suki costs either 2 green, 2 white, or 2 green-white. You could do any of those combinations overall. So there's variance here. But what Suki does is she is a star 4. Her power is equal to the total number of creatures you control. So again, when she enters the battlefield, she's immediately a 1/4 because it includes herself. Because it doesn't say other creatures you control, it just says the number of creatures you control. So it includes herself. Whenever she attacks, create a 1/1 white allied creature token that's tapped and attacking. So when she attacks, she goes up to being a 2/4. And that's not counting any other creatures you might have on the board at that time. But at the very least, she gets another creature into play. And that will keep happening so long as you keep all those tokens on the board. And yeah, they're also attacking as well. So that's kind of cool. And yeah, the idea there is like that obviously you want to go wide with like Kyoshi Warriors and just build up a bit of an army there to make Suki as big as possible. That's cool. And here's the Thriving Heath, which is the version of this card that is white mana, and then whatever mana color you choose, which would be basically the color of the other Jumpstart deck, you add to this one. So there's that. Let's move on to the next one here, which is the spells deck, which is Paku is the kind of headliner card here. Non-creature spell casting. So the idea is that creatures won't be as emphasized in this deck, and it will be more about what's going on with the instants and sorceries and stuff like that. So the first card here is very cool. Abandon Attachments, and it's 1 and a split red, blue. And you can do either. So it means you can pay 1 in the blue or 1 in the red for this. It's an instant lesson. You may discard a card, and if you do, draw 2 cards. Love the idea of this. This is Aang's decision for the book 2 finale, effectively, is does he, abandon his attachments and, accept the power of the Avatar state, or focus on saving Katara. It's a cool idea there. I suppose the fundamental idea is the red leaning into the power versus the blue leaning into Katara, and it's very, very cool. And they highlight that, of course, with the Guru Patik quote here as well. So that is a cool card, but it is fundamentally just, kind of hand cycling to a certain degree, because remember, like, you're playing this card, so you're losing a card from your hand by playing this, then you have to discard a card, so it's 2 for 2. You're technically losing 2 cards, paying 2 mana to get 2 cards. It's still decent, of course, and it is a lesson which is important for other stuff. First Time Flyer, also another card from the Northern Air Temple. So 2 mana for a 1/2 flyer. This creature gets +1/+1 as long as there's a lesson card in your graveyard. So again, it wants you to cast spells that are lessons, and that's why it's all about non-creature spell casting. Play these as quickly as possible to turn this effect on and others. Here is a Waterbending card, which is cool. Geyser Leaper. 5 mana for a 4/3 with flying, and it's a Waterbender character. Waterbend 4. Draw a card, then discard a card. So again, Waterbend is that you can pay for some or all of that Waterbend 4 cost by using your other creatures and artifacts to pay for it. So it's quite expensive at 4, but if you've got like another creature on the board, that suddenly goes down to 3 effectively. And if you've got a couple of creatures, it can get down as low as 2 or 1, or you're paying for the whole thing with the others. But yeah, it just allows you to kind of cycle a card, draw and discard. And yeah, cool. The flavor text is cool. With enough water pressure, a waterbender can briefly experience the world as an airbender. So fun stuff, and just highlighting some of the water tribe warrior aspects. Iguana Parrot. Okay, so we get the pirate iguana here, which is cool. So yeah, it's 3 for a 2/2 flying vigilance, which again means it's got flying, but it also doesn't tap when it attacks. And it's got prowess, which is when you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+1. So this is the other side of like using those non-creature spells. You can boost this by using lessons and instants and sorceries. So it'll be a temporary 3/3 flyer, which is actually quite good. So that's fun. This is a very fun card. Of course, they had to do a Cactus Juice card. It'll quench ya. So 1 and a blue for an instant lesson. So it is a lesson. That's important for this deck. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. So this is quite nice, of course. You want to counter your opponent's spells. And so the idea here is that if you keep track of your opponent's mana, you can guarantee that this is a counter. Or at least you can force them to use more mana to pay for that spell, just to kind of slow them down a little bit. So that's what blue likes to do. There's a lot of counter kind of spells in blue. And Cactus Juice is actually a perfect kind of way to do that effectively. It's almost like you're giving them the Cactus Juice, which basically takes them out of action. Because it took Sokka out of action for that like whole episode. Unless they, I suppose, pay the 2 to avoid drinking the Cactus Juice, which is kind of fun. Lost in the Spirit World is a sorcery. So this again is a non-creature spell. So 3 mana, return up to 1 target creature to its owner's hand. Okay, that's one way to get rid of the card by just sending it back to the hand. Create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token with this token can't block or be blocked by non-spirit creatures. So that's cool. Our first, well, we've seen a spirit before. The UA card is a spirit, of course, and we'll see Heibai as we go through this. But yeah, we're creating a spirit token. So this is meant to just represent you come across a spirit in the spirit world. And I suppose it takes something away from the board. The idea is that, this is a token, and because it's a spirit, and I guess you're in the spirit world, this spirit literally doesn't really almost interact with the physical world, and that's why it can't be blocked by non-spirit creatures, which is very fun. I'm actually super excited to see how deep the set goes into the kind of spirit theming in terms of how many there are. Because there's not that many in Avatar, so like how deep can they go unless they use the other material? Master Paku. So here's the headliner card. 2 mana for a 1/3 with prowess. So again, it gets that +1/+1 boost when you cast non-creature spells. And again, if you cast multiple non-creature spells, you keep getting that boost. Again, the whole thing drops off at the end of your turn, but you can get Paku up to like higher numbers, of course. So when he becomes tapped, target player mills X cards, where X is the number of lesson cards in your graveyard. So again, it's target player, so you can do this to yourself to get more of your lesson cards into your own graveyard, or you can do this to your opponent to attempt to sort of mill them out, because you win the game if your opponent runs out of cards. So there's a few things kind of going on here, where I'm guessing the idea is to kind of mill yourself to get a bunch of lesson cards into play, and then maybe start milling your opponent once X is going to actually be quite high. So that's kind of cool. Rowdy Snowballers, 3 mana for a 2/2 human peasant. Fun that they make the Southern Water Tribe Kids a card. When this creature enters, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. So the idea is tapping an opponent's creature is pretty good. It takes them out of blocking, but then the stun counter means that even when it gets around to their next turn, they have to kind of waste a turn getting rid of the stun counter, and only on their next turn do they finally get to sort of like untap the creature. So it's a cool way to properly take someone out of the way for a while, with the idea that they're hit with a snowball, so they're stunned. So that's kind of fun. Serpent of the Past. This is the first of 2 Serpent cards that we get here. 7 mana for a 6/5 Serpent. If there are 3 or more lesson cards in your graveyard, you may cast this spell as though it had flash. So again, the idea is that you're using Paku to mill cards from your own deck to put the lessons into the graveyard, as well as just playing them. Then you're able to cast the Serpent on your opponent's turn or whatever, and then this spell costs 1 less to cast for each non-creature, non-land card in your graveyard. So again, that would be the lessons, but any other non-lesson cards as well, like the sorcery we saw from before, and it doesn't include creatures or non-lands. So the idea is, once you get the flash effect, this spell costs 3 less to cast by default, plus likely a little bit more. Do keep in mind also is that you can't reduce the cost by more than 5, because you can get rid of the 5 generic mana in the cost, but you can't get rid of the fact that it still costs 2 blue. So you can actually cast this for as low as just the 2 blue, which is kind of fun, but it's probably more than likely you're maybe casting this for 4 mana probably, so it's kind of cool actually. It's a pretty solid card, I think. Turtle Seals, 4 mana for a 2/4 with Vigilance. Not much to say here. The art is cool, another animal, but very kind of simple card. Water Whip is the next lesson. It's a sorcery, 2 mana. As an additional cost to cast this spell, Waterbend 5. So just straight away, without factoring in what else you have on the board, that means this spell costs 7 mana. If you don't lower the cost with Waterbending, because it's 5 plus the 2 blue mana to play. Return up to 2 target creatures to their owner's hands and draw 2 cards. So it's a pretty good effect. You get rid of 2 things off their board that won't be able to block this turn and stuff like that. They have to recast them, so it'll slow them down. And you get to draw cards. But of course, you can lower the cost with Waterbending by tapping your artifacts and other creatures. And again, this is where the importance of Waterbending being in this theme comes into play with the Paku, because Paku's effect goes off when he is tapped. Now you might think, oh, but if I have to attack with Paku to get that to go off, they'll just block Paku and kill him. You can tap him for Waterbending effects. That's the other way to make him tapped. So there's that kind of fun kind of dynamic in Waterbending where you can kind of safely tap your creatures for Waterbending effects, which is definitely what you want to do to cast Water Whip. Barrels of Blasting Jelly, like I said, this is a fun card. 1 mana for an artifact. The basic effect is you pay 1, you can add 1 mana of any color, and you can only activate it once a turn. Now that's not great, again, because you're paying a mana just to get a mana in a different color. Now, that's nice if you're playing like a multicolored deck and you just need something to facilitate getting the color you need when you absolutely need it, but it is a quite slow way to gain mana. Like if that was just tap, gain a mana of any color, it would be great, but it does still cost 1 to get 1 mana. But the important part of this is actually the second effect. 5 mana, tap, and sacrifice Blasting Jelly. It deals 5 damage to a target creature. So you set off the Barrels of Blasting Jelly to do 5 damage to a creature, and that's probably going to kill something, and that's kind of nice. And then you get the Thriving Isle as a special land. Then we go into Waterbending, so the Katara focus deck. Power up your spells. So we have Bender's Water Skin. 3 colorless mana, so it's just a colorless card. 3 mana for an artifact. Untap this artifact during each other player's untap step, and it has tap, add 1 mana of any color. So kind of what we maybe wanted the Blasting Jelly to do. This is what this actually does. It's a artifact that gives you mana. That's strong. And then the fact that it untaps during every other player's turn means that, like, oh yeah, I'll happily use this on my turn because I then get to use that mana again on your opponent's turn as well. So this is actually quite good, and I think it's a cool thing with the idea, like, yeah, you always have the water there ready to go, because what does Waterbending do in this set? It lowers your mana cost by 1 for each artifact, and that's effectively what this is kind of doing. It just facilitates you getting sort of a mana of any color, not just generic mana. So it's useful, it's cool. Cat Owl. So we have another kind of split mana card where it's 3 in a white or 3 in a blue for the cat bird. Very cool art. 4 mana for a 3/3 flyer. When it attacks, untap target artifact or creature. So again, remember, this is the Waterbending deck. What does Waterbending do? You tap your artifacts and creatures to gain a mana to pay for stuff without using your normal mana. So this attacks and you get to untap stuff. So the idea is that you're meant to find clever ways to sort of like, okay, I'll use my mana here to do this. I'll then attack. I'll untap something, and then I can use that mana again kind of later on, or use Waterbending like before or after. It's an interesting one. There's definitely some clever things you can do with that. Deny entry. 3 mana, counter target creature spell, draw a card, then discard a card. So the idea is deny entry, so you're denying a person or a creature entry, and then draw a card and discard a card. That's nice, classic blue card. Flexible Waterbender. 4 mana for a 2/5 with Vigilance. So that's pretty solid. Like Vigilance, more of a defensive card, 5 toughness. But then interestingly, the reason it's called Flexible Waterbender is because of the Waterbending effect. Waterbend 3, this creature has base power and toughness 5/2 until end of turn. So it swaps its stats around to become more of an attacker. I'm not sure about this one, in that, like, it is a common, so it's not meant to be super powered. If that's something you actually want to do, just paying full 3 for that, I do feel that's one where, like, you probably would want to set up a turn where you can do that for maybe 1 mana, and the things you're tapping to waterbend it for cheaper are not, like, causing you too much pain kind of elsewhere. So yeah, kind of interesting card design. Flying Dolphin Fish. 2 mana for a 1/3 flyer, very simple, and you can see there that's what they're doing. A lot of the very basic card designs are being used for just the animals of the Avatar world, and that's pretty much perfect for them, I think. 6 mana for a 5/7 giant koi with Waterbend 3. So this creature can't be blocked this turn, and again, you can use Waterbending to pay for that for cheaper. So there's a lot of Waterbending options here to tap your things to gain the benefit from that other card untapping your stuff. And then you also have Island Cycling 2. So we saw Plane Cycling 2 before. This is Island Cycling 2. So you pay 2, you discard it, you search your deck for an Island, which is a blue source of mana. And again, this is good to have on a really, really big creature. Like if you draw this in your opening turn, yeah, you might not be playing this for a while, so it might be better off to get the mana from the land in play. Here's the actual headliner card, Katara Bending Prodigy, 3 mana for a 2/3. At the beginning of your end step, if Katara is tapped, put a +1/+1 counter on her. And again, you can do that by attacking, you can do that by using Katara to pay for waterbending costs. So you're going to be tapping her regularly, I think, overall. She also has Waterbend 6, draw a card. So that's a quite heavy cost, but again, you are going to want to, I guess, be tapping Katara at the very least. So immediately comes down to 5, and you probably have a couple of other things as well. Like, you know, you'll have your Bending Water Skin, that will lower it down again, and so on. So, you know, it's a high cost, but again, for Jumpstart, where the power level is not going to be super high in the beginner box, I think that's kind of a solid little thing, where like you will definitely have games where like this Katara pops off and like you're drawing cards all over the place, that sort of thing. So that's kind of cool. Otter Penguin, 2 mana for a 2/1. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, this creature gets +1/+2 until end of turn and can't be blocked. So you want to draw cards with this one, and it'll boost it. Do any of the other cards in this draw card? So this allows you to draw a card, but it's quite expensive. This allows you to draw a card. Okay, so there's a little bit of card draw going on here. Let's see what else we have. Oh, the Sokka. The Sokka facilitates it as well. So yeah, Sokka is 1 white-blue, for a 2/4 Vigilance. When Sokka and at least one other creature attacks, draw a card. Okay, so there's your kind of more solid way to keep drawing cards. He has Vigilance. So okay, that's cool. So that you can do stuff like with him, attack. He won't be tapped from attacking, so then later on in your turn, you can tap him for a waterbending effect. And you can sort of see how this deck is meant to operate. And then here's the other Serpent's Pass card. 7 mana for Terror of Serpent's Pass. It is a rare from the TLE. 8/8, so that's the biggest stats I think we've seen on an Avatar creature so far. Legendary creature Serpent, hexproof. This creature can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponent controls. So it's a very protective effect there. So it means this is protected from all like targeting removal. So cards that say, for instance, I think the Sozin card says at the start, destroy all creatures. It would destroy this because destroy all creatures doesn't specifically target one creature. It's the whole field basically. It would protect you from like this target one creature, do 3 damage to it. That it's protected from stuff like that. But still, it's something you have to deal with because again, you have 20 life. This has a power. You know, they've got to deal with this thing. That's exciting. Next, Waterbending Lesson. So here's the Waterbending Lesson. 4 mana, draw 3 cards, then discard a card unless you Waterbend 2. This is cool. This is actually a cool use of waterbending, where like if you don't waterbend, it's just draw 3 cards, discard a card. So again, you're playing this card, so you're losing 1 card from your hand. You're discarding a card. So you are gaining a card in this deal. Draw 3, you're effectively losing 2 cards, but you don't have to do that. Discard the card. If you pay for 2 elsewhere, you can either just pay the 2 mana or tap some artifact, tap some creatures. That's pretty good, I think. And again, it's like, okay, so those are the basic ways with just some spells to do a lot of the bending. A lot of them still cost, like, say, 3. This one costs 4. So I'm thinking about the Aang card, the big fancy transform Aang card, in terms of, like, what is the most effective way to transform him? Because remember, his effect is when you waterbend, firebend, airbend, and earthbend all in the same turn, you can transform him. He has built-in firebending, but the other 3 he doesn't have, so it's kind of like, how'd you make that happen unless you have a ton of mana? Watery Grasp. 1 mana for an aura enchantment, enchant creature. that creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. So that means you just permanently... so you do have to make sure it is already in an untapped position for this to properly work. Because if it's already not untapped and you enchant it, it doesn't say to untap it, or to tap it. So it's just a timing kind of type thing. But then Waterbend 5, enchanted creature's owner shuffles it into their library. So the idea is you grab them, and then if your water bending is good enough, you get rid of them pretty completely. Like shuffling it back into their deck. That's what the library is called in Magic. It's just your deck. That's a really efficient way to just get rid of the card, ultimately. Now in Jumpstart, a lot of the decks won't really have access to the graveyard and stuff like that. So like, it's one way or the other. It's fine, but still a cool card. The art, very cool. One of Qatar's like best moments, where she like basically one-on-one has Azula beat, which is interesting. Moving on to the attacking deck. So this is a black mana. So again, bit of a mystery, but like, okay, what's the full thing with this? It does seem to be leaning into like, yeah, this is your Fire Nation army, whereas a lot of the red cards are more leaning into like, this is quote unquote the good side of firebending for the most part, whereas black is sort of like the evil side. Find ways to always attack. So first of all, we have the beetle-headed merchants. 5 mana for a 5/4 human citizen on the beetle. When it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, draw a card and put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Okay, so that's interesting. If you have a random artifact, you get rid of that, draw a card, and boost the power. Or another creature. Okay, so it'll be interesting to see what way this deck goes in regards to that. Catgator, 7 mana for a 3/2. Okay, that's not great. Fish Crocodile with lifelink, still not great. When it enters, it deals damage equal to the number of swamps you control to any target. Okay, there we go. That suddenly makes it a lot better. It deals damage equal to any target. So yeah, by the time you have this in play, again, it depends on like you have 2 decks shuffled together, so half your lands realistically will be swamps. And by the time you get the Catgator into play, let's say you have 4 of them in play, it might be like 4 or 5, 3 perhaps. It enters, it deals that much damage to any target. So it probably kills something, or late-ish in the game, you really threaten your opponent's life with that. I still feel like this is one where like you only feel like you get the value out of this if you hit them for like 5 or 6 or something like that. But still cool ish to have the lifelink as well. Corrupt Court Official, of course. We have the mayor of Chin Village here. 2 mana for a 1/1. When it enters, target opponent discards a card. That's always a pretty like frustrating effect when it happens to you, of just like 2 mana, turn like you're trying to get going, they drop this on like turn 2, you lose a card. That could be your next land that you're planning to play, a big creature. They can really mess you up here. So like this is actually like one of those cards that's like, okay, if you go into black, you probably actually want this card, because that really does disrupt your opponent. Then we have this one, Dai Li Indoctrination. It is a lesson, it's a sorcery, 2 mana. Choose one of these effects. The first one is target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land permanent card from it. That player discards that card. So again, with the last card, hand destruction, then you can do hand destruction again. You can really start ripping cards out of your opponent's hand. Or if you don't want to do that, you can Earthbend too. So interestingly, here's an Earthbend card that's not in green. Where yeah, you will target one of your lands, it will become a creature, and it gets 2/+1/+1 counter. So it's a 2/2 land creature. So that's cool. It's very actually useful. It means you can, okay, if I need a creature, it gets me a 2/2 creature. Or if I just want to mess up my opponent, yeah, you lose another card from your hand. Very nice. Epic Downfall. This is a really good card. So 2 mana for a sorcery, exile target creature with mana value 3 or greater. So if you hold this back for later in the game, you just get to exile their biggest card, basically. You target what you want to, just get rid of it. Really important removal spell in terms of like what I guess black is trying to do. You can sort of see like, okay, there's some nice like early cards, like the Mayor of Chin Village. You probably want to pick him up, pick this up, and you just have some really good stuff to mess up what your opponent is trying to do. And the art here is, again, really, really nice. Fire Nation Ambushers. So 3 mana for a 3/2 flash. So again, that makes sense. Ambush, so you can flash it in on your opponent's turn. Heartless Act. 2 mana, instant, choose one. You can either destroy target creature with no counters on it, or remove up to 3 counters from target creature. That's interesting. Destroy it if they don't have counters. So yeah, like I guess like a lot of the white cards do seem to have counters. Earthbending makes creatures with counters. So there is counter stuff in this set, so it actually kind of fits overall here, where like you can see this thing doing something like where you make a big earthbending creature that's like 4 or 5 counters on it. It reduces it down to like 2. That's interesting. I really like the art, especially like the really kind of thick-limbed Appa here. It's a cool stylistic choice. I love the art on this card. This is so nice looking. I think this is such a cool decision to get across just the spirit world in general, the kind of duality of spirits as well. That like here was our first spirit really that we kind of got to see, and a spirit that kind of represents that light-dark dynamic. And it's always been that weird thing with people where Korra, quote unquote, introduced the idea of dark spirits when like we had always had this dynamic in place. So Heibai, Spirit of Balance, and again it's 2 white-black or white-black, so 4 mana for a 3/3 bear spirit. Whenever Heibai attacks or enters, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, put 2+1/+1 counters on Heibai. So the idea is realistically there. It comes in, you sacrifice something, he goes up to being now a 5/5. You can't attack on your first turn, but you attack then afterwards, and it goes up to being, I guess, a 7/7, assuming you have enough things to sacrifice. But this can become quite a menace. And then I love the second effect as well, because it kind of gets across the idea that kind of spirits are immortal. Like you can't ever truly defeat them. Even when Heibai leaves the battlefield, his counters go to something else to kind of make them more powerful. So that's kind of cool. So at the very least, you know, realistically, you're sending 2 counters to something else. That's nice. So I actually really like this card. I think it's cool. I hope it is an indication that there actually is a decent amount of spirit stuff to do. Like, I assume there will be a Code the Face Stealer card, and I'm guessing there will be some play in that regard with that sort of thing, where I'm guessing they're going to be playing on that idea of, you know, it's difficult to fully remove the threat of a spirit from the board, and that might be a thing to play with, where Heibai's counters are always in play. They're going to do something very flavorful with regards to the face stealing aspect, so that's going to be cool. Line Vulture, we have here 4 mana for a 2/2 catbird, so it's got flying. At the beginning of your end step, if an opponent lost life this turn, put +1/+1 counter on this creature and draw a card. Okay, so you just have to make your opponent lose life, and then at the end of the turn, this gets more powerful, and you get to draw a card. And it's already a 4 mana 2/2 flyer, which is a little bit expensive for that amount, but it is still a flyer. If you're confident when you play this that like you're going to do damage and immediately get it up to being a 3/3, I think this is pretty good. Merchant of Many Hats. So yeah, 2 mana for a 2/2. Interesting that this is in black. 3 mana, so 2 and a black, for return this card from your graveyard to your hand. And the flavor text explains the whole dynamic here. He's Doc, Zu, and Bushi from the Jianghui River Village. So yeah, it's just a simple 2 mana 2/2 that you can get back into your hand for a certain cost. I wonder, is there any other kind of play with this? It obviously speaks to the idea there will be stuff from the Painted Lady episode. So like, I'm assuming we will get a Painted Lady card, and at the very least, I guess we're getting a Katara Painted Lady card. I wonder, will we actually get the spirit herself, the Painted Lady, as a card? That will be interesting to see how they do those two cards. Pretending Poxbearers, 1 and a white or a black for a 2/1. So it's 2 mana for a 2/1. When it dies, create an ally creature token. Okay, that's interesting. So like, it just, the idea is like, it's kind of a zombie type thing. You kill this thing, but something else kind of comes back, and it fits the idea of like what they were trying to do with this, and people pretending to have this disease and drawing more people in to kind of get out from under the Fire Nation's thumb. And here's how they did it with the purple Pentapus. So 1 black mana for a 1/1 octopus starfish. When it enters, surveil 1. So that means you get to look at the top card of your library, and you can put it into your graveyard if you wish. 3 mana, tap an untapped creature you control. Return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Okay, so this has to be in the graveyard to do this, and then you pay 3, you tap a different creature. I suppose you sort of infect that creature, and you get this back onto the field, that sort of idea. Okay, that's interesting. So there's a bit of a kind of like reanimation kind of theme going on here, with a little bit of the little bit of zombie theming we have in Avatar, which is interesting. I wonder if there's more to that in terms of the black theme to do what you want to do there, because okay, there's a little bit of like benefit from dying, bringing things back, but like, is there a payoff really for this? I guess it's this. This wants you to sacrifice things, and also, yeah, the Heibai also wants you to sacrifice things. Okay, so that explains why you have a bit of reanimation. Is that like you want to, with this guy, easy sacrifice target because you are able to get him back. Same with this, you can sacrifice this because it immediately generates a token. This also can come back to create a sacrifice outlet. Okay. It took me a little bit to get to the idea, but I see what they're kind of going for there, is that there's a few cards that want you to sacrifice things, and then there's a few things that can bring things back. Counters, also in black, above your team. This is the Long Feng focus deck with Azula. So Azula Always Lies is a lesson, 2 mana, choose one or both, so you can actually do both of these ones. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Okay, so the idea there is if you don't have anything on your field, you don't have to give your opponent a +1/+1 counter. Same with like if your opponent's field is empty, you don't have to target your own thing with the -1/-1. You can just do one or both. So okay, you weaken something on your opponent's side of the field, you boost something on your side of the field. The -1/-1 can potentially kill something weak. That's pretty nice. And yeah, the idea is that they're complete opposite effects of the idea truth or lie with Azula. Another creature animal from Avatar, Buzzard Wasp Colony, 4 mana for a 2/2 flyer. When it enters, you may sacrifice an artifact or creature. If you do, draw a card. Okay. Whenever another creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, put its counters on this creature. Put its counters on this creature. Okay. So there's that kind of works with Heibai, though Heibai kind of does this by default. Like Heibai's effect puts the counters on stuff anyway, but like, okay, I see what they're kind of trying to do. That like, I guess maybe the Heibai counters go onto something else, and then this is a way to get them onto something else again. But Heibai's not in this deck. But still, you can see the theming if you go into black, of course. There's a bit of a manipulating counters going on. You also get the Dialik card in this deck. Earth Village Ruffians, so 2 and a black or 2 and a green for a 3/1. When it dies, Earthbend 2. Okay. So on death, you get to Earthbend 2. That's interesting. Elephant Rat, 2 for a 1/3 menace. Okay, so early on, I guess the idea is that that's just a different form of like evasion. Like do you actually want this thing to get kind of double blocked necessarily? Are you going to boost this thing up particularly? I'm not really sure. But yeah, I think the idea is that this is mostly just there to kind of get through some initial damage before your opponent properly builds up a board to block. Feed the Swarm, 2 mana for destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. So it's a cheap removal spell because it's just destroy target creature. That's great. Or enchantment is like, okay, let's see, is there any dangerous enchantments in the Avatar set? That's interesting. But the kind of counter to that is obviously you lose life based on what you've actually destroyed. So later on in the game that might be a lot, but still, like, an easy way to destroy target creatures is actually perfectly fine. In the early game, that's like, okay, yeah, I'll take the 2 life to destroy your, 2 mana 2/2 that's like doing stuff. That's interesting. Fire Nation Engineer. This is quite an interesting card. 3 mana for a 2/3 with Raid, which is at the beginning of your end step. If you attack this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature or vehicle you control. So the creature thing makes a lot of sense, obviously, but because it's an engineer, of course, or vehicle. So obviously it's suggesting that there are going to be vehicles somewhere in the Avatar set because this is a TLA card. Now, obviously, where do we see the engineers? Primarily on the drill. So I'm guessing the drill is going to be a vehicle in the Avatar set. And obviously that is a giant vehicle. So that's going to have like an insane crew cost and probably insane stats on it as well. So I'm excited to see that. I'm guessing stuff as well like the Tundra tank will be a vehicle. The airship from the end of the show. The war balloons. We've got like the submarine that the kind of allied forces use later on. There's a few things here because like we also get our own tanks later on as well. So there is the potential for some interesting vehicles here, but obviously this is more on the Fire Nation end of things, which is maybe where they might focus the theming of vehicles. But yeah, it makes me excited for a potential drill card, just to see that, like, okay, you attack with this, and it's not if this card attacked, it's just if you attacked this turn. So this doesn't have to do anything there. You just attack with something else. You can boost the power of your vehicle. That's cool. But yeah, this is specifically an airship engineer. So I guess they're teasing that airship will be one of the vehicles. But I'm more thinking about the drill. Fire Nation Sentinels, 5 mana for a 4/4. Whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Okay, so non-token. So yeah, you don't get to just bully their tokens and just gain a benefit. It has to be an actual card. But you give a counter to everything you have. That's cool. So there's a source of those tokens for like the Buzzard Wasp card that was referencing tokens in black. Gillicorn, 1 for a 1/1 Death Touch. This is pretty nice. That's a good card. Death Touch means that like any amount of damage this deals to a creature is enough to destroy it. So even though it's only a 1/1, a 6/6 could be attacking into it. If you block, you kill it. Even though it doesn't have enough power to kill it, Death Touch means it kills whatever it touches. So this is a dangerous card, of course. So that's cool. Hog Monkey, 3 mana for a 3/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gains a counter and it gains menace until end of turn. At the beginning of contact, target creature. I suppose it can give it to itself. So it could become a 4/3 with menace. Okay, and then it has Exhaust 5, put 2 +1/+1 counters on this creature. So Exhaust is basically just like it's a one-time use ability. Instead of just having 5 +1/+1 counters on it, it's Exhaust. So you get one use in the entire game for that. So that's interesting for later on. If it lasts that long, you can bump it up again to be, I guess at that point it would be like a 4/3, but then it would be a 6/5 menace, which is actually quite strong. Here's Long Feng. So he is 1 and a black and a green and a black and a green. So 3 for a 2/3. Whenever another creature you control or a land you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Okay, so creature or land goes to the graveyard. You get a counter on any target creature you control. So it can be himself or it can be other things. Now, interestingly, it mentions lands going to the graveyard. I don't think we've seen any card that allows you to destroy lands, which is usually a very powerful effect in Magic, as in they typically don't want you to do it, which is why a lot of the cards we've seen already mention stuff like do something to a non-land permanent. They typically don't like you destroying lands. So how are we actually doing that? Ozai's Cruelty. 3 mana for a lesson. Sorcery. It deals 2 damage to target player, and that player discards 2 cards. Ooh, so that's kind of devastating. Not a ton of damage, but the double card discard is actually like a heavy hitter, of course. So yeah, you can see the idea of black has a bit of a hand destruction dynamic going on. And then the 2 mana is probably enough to take out something early on in the game, which is pretty solid. Makes sense for especially such a monumental kind of story moment here for that card to be quite powerful. And you get this land. Next, Firebending. So we get a different Zuko again. Zuko Exiled Prince. 4 mana for a 4/3. Firebending 3. So when you attack, you get 3 red mana that you can use until the end of combat, which basically means it can be used for instant speed stuff. So like his own effect would fit that, but also you can cast instants as well. So 3, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So the idea is, I suppose there, is that you want to attack, activate his own effect, take the top thing from your library. And again, it says you may play it this turn. It still means you have to pay the cost of it. It's not play it for free. So you do still need other mana to kind of cast that card then. So again, this is going to rely on support to kind of get where it needs to do in terms of other cards, I guess, with Firebending. Deserter's Disciple. So this is Che, basically. I wonder, does he have a named card as well, or are they just going with it's Che? Deserter's Disciple. So 2 for a 2/2. Tap, target creature you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. Okay, so you get rid of him and he allows something to get through for sure on damage, which is kind of nice. Fire Nation Archers. Note there is another card coming up called Yuyan Archers. That's why this one isn't called that. 4 for a 3/4. Reach. That makes sense on the Archers. Of course, they can hit stuff in the air. 5 mana. This creature deals 2 damage to each opponent. Okay, just straight up damage to the face, and you create a 2/2 red soldier creature token. Okay, so you do damage, you get another archer, quote unquote, soldier comes into play. Fire Sages. 2 for a 2/2 with Firebending 1. Okay, so you get 1 when this is attacking, and then it has an effect. 3 mana. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So the idea is, like, say you have Zuko and this on the field and you attack with both of them. You technically are getting like Firebending 4. You're generating 4 mana. And then you can choose to spend that on like Zuko's effect. You can choose to spend it on the Fire Sage's effect to boost again, or whatever. And if you do use Zuko's effect, that gives you a mana to play the card off the top that you got with the Zuko, that sort of thing. This is How to Start a Riot. Very flavorful card here. 3 mana for an instant lesson. Target creature gains menace until end of turn, and creatures target player controls gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And again, remember, it's an instant, so you can actually use the mana you generate from Firebending to cast this. So Zuko has Firebending 3. You can attack with Zuko and basically play this for free using that Firebending mana. And then that makes, I guess, Zuko have menace, and he gets +2/+0. That's pretty nice. Just to kind of guarantee you don't lose your attackers, I suppose, while you're doing your attacking to generate your Firebending. And that's all of your creatures. It's not just one. So yeah, one thing gets menace and then everything else gets +2/+0. That's nice. Another instant, again, that you can use with Firebending. So Lightning Strike. 2 mana for just 3 damage to any target. So you can hit the player directly, their life total, or any creature. That's nice. And again, you can use the Firebending mana for that because it is an instant. Loyal Fire Sage. So this is Shayu. 2 and a red for a 3/3. So 3 for 3/3. Firebending 1. And then it has 5. Create a 1/1 white ally creature token. Okay, so there's another thing. He generates some mana himself, and then you can spend that on his own effect to get a token. Again, you do want to be attacking with a lot of things there. Like, you probably want the Fire Sages, him attacking, and Zuko attacking to get to, like, Firebending 5 to make that a little bit more value. I'm actually fascinated to see how a deck like the Firebending decks are actually going to play, because there's going to be a lot of thinking about, like, okay, how many am I attacking with? How many mana am I generating? And then at what point am I using different things? Because this is mana that only lasts for a certain part of my turn. It means you're going to have to plan out your turns quite carefully, I think, to maximize everything with Firebending. It's probably not too bad in Jumpstart, but if you make a full constructed deck with Firebending cards, it could be kind of tricky. Next up, the Mongoose Lizard. So 6 mana here for a 5/6 Mongoose Lizard. It's a common. Menace, so it can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. When it enters, it deals 1 damage to any target. That's kind of just 1 damage for 6 for a 5/6. Just 1 damage, okay. And it's got Mountain Cycling 2. Okay, so this is how you get your mountain. It's part of that cycle of kind of bigger kind of animal creatures that offers you the chance to kind of trade it in earlier to get a mountain into play. So that's cool. Next is Roku's Mastery. So this is super cool. I love the art here on this one here. Roku, an avatar, of course, showing his power. So X red for an instant. Again, it's an instant, so you can use your Firebending mana on this. Roku's Mastery deals X damage to target creature. If X is 4 or greater, scry 2. Which means you get to look at the top 2 cards of your library, and you can choose to keep them on the top or bottom. So you get to stack your deck a little bit there to decide what you're doing on your next turn. So, okay, if you want it to be 4 or greater, that means you have to pay 6 for this, because X has to be 4, and then it's the 2 red. So you have to pay 6, but again, you're probably using stuff generated from Firebending. And by the time you want to use it, it's probably a little bit later on in the game. So yeah, your Zuko attacks, that's generating 3 mana, and you probably have some mana left over yourself. You can see how you can definitely get some value out of this and do something quite big with this. And it's you have the option to use this earlier on in the game to take out something with, like, say, 2 toughness for just 4 mana, or later on for something bigger. So I think that's kind of cool. I don't think it's amazing, but, like, it's a cool, flavorful card. The Rough Rhino Cavalry. So of course we have the Rough Rhinos led by Colonel Monkey. 5 for a 5/5. Firebending 2. Okay, another source of firebending, but still it's later on in the game. And Exhaust 8. So this is, again, you can only activate this ability once in a game. 8 mana. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on this creature, and it gains trample until end of turn. So it goes up to being a 7/7, and for the turn the turn you use exhaust, it gains trample. So there's probably no way you're casting this and then using the exhaust, because you don't want to do that anyway, because it has summoning sickness. So you have to wait until your next turn to do that anyway. He generates 2 himself on attack. And again, there's some timing stuff in the combat window, but yeah, as you attack, you generate the mana. You can boost him before, like, the damage goes through, I guess. So there's a way to use this. Again, there's a kind of timing aspect to this. It does seem like the Firebending deck is going to be the one that's maybe not as beginner focused, because Waterbending is actually quite simple when you really break it down. It's just lowering the cost of things. Earthbending is turning your lands into creatures with some tokens to represent the +1/+1 counters, and then Airbending is just exile with, you just remember that it costs 2 to bring it back. The others are very simple, but Firebending is, like, it seems simple, but then, like, if you're not familiar with the idea of, like, the windows in time when you can play certain abilities, it is a little bit tricky. But I think the clue is in a lot of these cards, is that they have Firebending plus this, like, activated ability, and that's what you're meant to do. So Vindictive Warden, so this is the Boiling Rock Warden. So 2 and a black or 2 and a red for a 2/3 with Menace. Okay. Firebending 1, and 3, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So there's a lot of like, do 1 to this thing, do 1 to that thing. If we go back to the Mongoose Lizard, it's 1 damage to any target. Okay, so it's I thought that, I think initially I thought that said creature, so you can do it to your opponent. So you're kind of pinging them for 1 a lot. This specifically targets creatures. So okay, that's cool. Here's the Yu Yan Archer card. So 2 mana for a 3/1 Archer Reach. When this creature enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Okay, that's nice. Another Reach, so to take out the flyers, and then allows you to get a card. Okay. That's that. And then we move on to Earthbending. So we're into the last 2 here. So Earthbending, wheeled lands in combat. Here's our Toph for this deck. And so it's an uncommon TLA, so this is going to be in the packs as well. So 3 mana for a star 3. When Toph enters, Earthbend 2. And then Toph's power is equal to the number of +1/+1 counters on lands you control. Okay, so she comes in. She turns one of your lands into a 2/2 with 2 counters because of Earthbend 2. So straight away, Toph is a 2/3 when she comes in. And that's assuming you haven't done any other Earthbending beforehand. And then that ability means her power basically adjusts as this changes, of course. So if you Earthbend on your next turn, you're going to boost her power. I think this is cool. This is like the classic Earthbend, like this is what Earthbending's about. Toph just gets more powerful the more Earthbending is happening. That's, I think, really strong, really flavorful. Badger Mole. So here is the original animal, the original Earthbender animal. So 5 mana for a 4/4 Badger Mole. When it enters, Earthbend 2. Okay, so that also helps out Toph. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have trample. That's really nice. That's actually, I think, kind of perfect for Earthbending, where like the animal kind of assists with Earthbending being even better. So Earthbending creatures have trample, and so all the extra damage goes through to life. I really, really like that. I can see myself maybe building some sort of a Earthbending deck. It seems like a really fun, flavorful overall. Boomy, Eclectic Earthbender. 3 green for a 4/4. So 5 for a 4/4. When he enters, Earthbend 1. Okay. When he attacks, put 2 +1/+1 counters on each land creature you control. Okay, so there's a bit of a payoff for Earthbending. That you start off with a bunch of basic Earthbendings that are either 2 or 1. And then Boomy, through attacking, boosts them more and more into bigger threats. Okay, I definitely like that. And then yeah, Toph is going to get empowered by Boomy boosting everything. So you can see the immediate combo there. And then, like I said before, this is TLE Boomy. So this is specifically like Jumpstart Boomy. So there's probably going to be a King Boomy in the main set that does something maybe slightly different here. Because this feels like just classic Earthbending, whereas Boomy is more of a crazy Earthbender. So I'm expecting maybe a little bit more of a mechanically unique Boomy somewhere down the line. This is powerhouse Boomy is kind of what they're going for here, rather than crazy Boomy. Earth Kingdom Soldier, so 4 and a white or 4 and a green for a 3/4 with Vigilance. When it enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. Okay, so this gives it to just anything, but it can also give it to your Earthbending land creatures as well. So that's nice. 5 for a 3/4 with Vigilance is bit but I think the counters make up for it. I think I think this is decent, and that is TLA actually as well. Yeah, so that's going to be part of like drafting as well. Earth Rumble, 3 and a green for a sorcery. Earthbend 2. When you do, up to 1 target creature you control fights target creature an opponent controls. So yeah, you turn something into a 2/2 creature, and then one of your creatures gets to fight an opponent's creature. So yeah, creatures that fight each deal damage equal to their power to each other. So the idea there realistically is that you make that fight happen so that it benefits you. Now, to a certain degree, you might want to maybe just sacrifice one of your Earthbent kind of constructs to take out one of their 2/2s or something like that. But it's a removal kind of spell to a certain degree for green. That's kind of what it's going for. Next up, Earth Village Ruffians. We've seen this card before. This was in the other deck. Earthbending Lesson. Again, this was revealed on the reveal stream. It's just a sorcery lesson for mana for Earthbend 4. So a big source of Earthbending. So that's cool. Explore. 2 mana for you may play an additional land this turn. Draw a card. So there's your green ramp. So you're able to do more lands to build up to bigger things. And this is going to be, again, I suppose an important draft card to maybe keep an eye out for if you're ever doing some Avatar draft. So that's nice. Haru, Hidden Talent. 2 mana for a 1/1. Okay. Whenever another ally you enters Earthbend 1. So, okay, there we go. That's interesting. That, like, you can see, like, the idea of, like, a regular source of Earthbending just by having creatures you control entering to make more and more lands into creatures. So is everything an ally here? This one isn't. Okay. This one isn't. This is. That isn't. Toph is. This one doesn't maybe feel like it works as well if there's not that many options for it. Because yeah, your lands that become creatures from Earthbending aren't allies either. So like that, again, you can see how if you construct a deck around this is a good card. It's just there's maybe not as many links in this deck to that. Pillar Launch. 1 for target creature gets +2/+2 and gains reach until end of turn. Untap it. That's fun. That's really, really cool. Top-headed flying. Launching, however, was a trajectory under her control. That's cool. Target creature gets... And untap it. Okay. Rebellious Captive. So here's another ally. So, and it's a cheap one as well. So 2 for a 2/2. And then it just has an exhaust ability. For 6... put 2/+1/+1 counters on this creature, then Earthbend 2. Okay, so that's nice actually. It goes to being a 4/4 and you get another, Earthbending kind of construct creature thing. That's nice. Rocky Rebuke. 2 mana for an instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. So it's fight without the kind of counter strike there. So it's very much a kind of green removal spell type thing. And yeah, the idea is you build something up. Like even your Earth construct that's maybe like a 4/4, you have that do something. So there's that. And then we're on to the last of the decks. So big creatures in green. Battle with the biggest. Eel Hands. 4 for a 4/2 with Trample. Whenever this creature attacks, another target creature you control gains +2/+2 and gains Trample until end of turn. Okay, so yeah, that's pretty good. I could see maybe this one working out quite well with the Zuko deck that has the Komodo Rhino theming. Was that the first or the second Zuko deck? I forget. I think it might have been the first one. So yeah, that actually might work well with that, with the trample focus. Next, Flopsy, Boomy's Buddy. 4 for a... 4 green for a 4/4. When he enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Okay. Each creature you control with 4 or more power... with power 4 or greater, can't be blocked by more than one creature. Okay, that's interesting. That, because what that means is basically it puts so much pressure on your opponent because they can't just like, oh, I need to get rid of their big threat, all my blocks into one creature. They really have to be careful on the block, I think, there. And again, they're boosted by the +1/+1 stuff, so that's kind of cool. And again, that supports, I guess, like Boomy and the Earthbending of like making more and more land creatures and then Boomy making them stronger. And then Flopsy makes everything stronger. But now also you can't double block these things. So it's easier for them to get through. Kind of cool. Though Boomy's not in the deck with Flopsy, you can see how that might work. Frog Squirrels. 2 for a 2/2 with Reach. Makes sense. Pretty solid. Hippo Cows, 5 for a 5/4 with Trample. I love that there's a card of this animal. It's just so funny. Yeah, that's solid in terms of what you're trying to do here. And again, you can see some of the green theming as well here. Of like, there's trample here. There's a card that we saw previously that was related to trample. One in a red or one in a green for Hog Monkey Rampage. It's an instant. Choose target creature you control and target creature an opponent controls. Okay, put a +1/+1 counter on the creature you control if it has power 4 or greater. Then those creatures fight each other. Okay, so it's basically, okay, fight with a benefit of a counter if you choose something powerful. Otherwise, it is just fight. Okay, that's pretty solid. Again, it's only 2 mana, and that's about what you'd expect from a fight card, I think, typically. For some reason, the next card isn't properly loading just normally. So it's Ostrich Horse. It's 3 mana for a 3/1 bird horse. When this creature enters, mill 3 cards. You may put a land card from among them into your hand. If you don't, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Okay, so you mill 3. So 3 cards from the top of your deck go to the graveyard. If there is a land, you can put it into your hand. If there is not, it goes up by +1/+1. Pretty solid, I think, overall. And then we'll get into the last couple of cards here. If I can scroll down to them here. You can see here, this, for some reason, the Ostrich Horse wasn't loading. Or actually, wait, no. I thought I might have read the wrong card out there, actually. Oh yeah, it's this card, actually, here. Match the odds. So, yeah, it's 3 mana for a sorcery lesson. Create a 1/1 white ally creature token. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each creature your opponent controls. Okay, so 3 mana, you get a token, it's 1/1, and then it gets bigger based on how many creatures your opponent has. So if they have 1, it's a 2/2. If they have 2, it's a 3/3. Okay, so it kind of like quote unquote evens the odds. I think that's nice-ish overall. So that's kind of cool. And then we'll get into the last couple of cards here. You get the Mechanical Glider in this one. There's the Ostrich Horse in bigger art, so you can see it. Roxious Audience, so 2 for a 2/1. Tap, add green. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, add 2 green instead. This is good. And it's a common. So yeah, this is going to be one that you, if you're doing a green deck, you want to pick this up. This is always good to have on turn 2, another source of green mana, just to kind of ramp yourself a little bit. And yeah, the idea that, yeah, it gives you 2 mana once you start to get big creatures on the board. Cool way to do the kind of audience at the Earth Rumble. Sabertooth Mooseline. So here's our big green creature that has forest cycling. So you can see that's a cycle of cards there that we've now seen. 4 green for a 7/7 with reach and forest cycling 2. Which again is, you can discard this card, pay 2, search your library for a forest card just to kind of replace it in your hand if you want to. Seismic Tutelage. 4 mana for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. When this aura enters, put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature. Okay. Whenever enchanted creature attacks, double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. Okay. So the idea is you just start to get rolling at that point. Because you have 1 +1/+1 counter. You attack. It doubles to 2 +1/+1 counters. And then it goes to 4, 8, 16. And then if you have any other sources to add them on, obviously that number will change based on what you're doubling it by. That's cool. There's potential with that, of course. Depending on what you put it on. And that, like, if you put it on something with trample, that's kind of cool. And yeah, Turtle Duck. 1 mana for a 0/4 with 3. Until end of turn, this creature has base power 4 and gains trample. So yeah, that's actually fun and flavorful with the flavor text there of like, it's quite peaceful. It's a defensive kind of creature with the turtle shell, but put a bit more energy in, the mother gets angry, and all of a sudden it's a 4/4. And it has trample. It's dangerous when angry. So that's cool. It does cost 3, but because it's a 1 mana thing that's mainly just there for defense, I suppose, at the start, the fact that it can actually come into play in a sort of big way. It's not just that it becomes like a 2/4, it's a 4/4 with trample is actually quite good. And you get Thriving Grove as well. So that's the beginner box. I think it's a pretty nice grouping of things. There's it definitely feels like there's maybe some main characters that are not really included here. Like, interestingly, like there was no Ozai card here. There's no Mei. There's no Ty Lee. It doesn't feature absolutely everything, and you can maybe make the argument that, like, if there's maybe one criticism, it's perhaps that there are, quote unquote, in essence, like 2 Aang decks and 2 Zuko decks. I understand they both do kind of different things. This is meant to be more very general beginner Magic focused on kind of the combat stuff, the same with the Zuko deck, and that is different than what where is it? It's different from what this deck does, because it's more about firebending itself mechanically with the set, and then the allies deck is more focused on the ally mechanic, but it is still like 2 decks kind of led by Aang and then 2 by Zuko. When maybe there could have been some extra little bit of variety there, but again, it's a beginner box. It's not meant to cover absolutely every aspect of things, but it still has most of the mechanics kind of covered here. And like I said, it's a really good product, I think, for anyone to just grab, because it's the only value for money product at, like, I think $35. It is going to be one that I think is relatively readily available. Like, it shouldn't really be selling out, or if it does sell out, it'll probably come back into stock. So yeah, definitely grab this one if you are at all interested in Avatar Magic, just to try out. And as you can see here, you get a giant selection of cards that includes a bunch of the animals, a bunch of the main characters, and then if you buy any other products, you're quickly going to build a collection, of course, as well. And then if you really like what the box is doing, buy Jumpstart packs, and you have this ×2, depending on how many packs you're going to buy for Jumpstart, to add the themes in here. Like, you know, you say you open up the Cabbage Merchant pack, and you get to use that Cabbage Merchant card. You're kind of doing some kind of impressive stuff there. So very cool. I'm excited to get my hands on this and play some of these games and see how these kind of half decks work together. But yeah, I think this is an instant buy. There's no real debate over this one if you should or shouldn't buy it. But yeah, that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. We had so many cards to go over. Let's see, we're at about an hour 43. Given that we had 100 cards to talk about, I'm relatively happy with that, given that I did a bit of a intro and covered everything, you know. So let me know what you think. Are you going to be picking up the beginner box? Especially if you are, like, new to Magic. Is this absolutely something that's on your purchase list? What interests you about it? Especially if you are, like, completely new to Magic. I'm actually really interested to know what you think of the product aimed at beginners, because I think it looks really cool from an Avatar fan perspective, and just as a Magic fan, this is actually a really ideal beginner product as well. I do think what Avatar, the card lineup, is missing probably is something like Commander decks, just to have that slightly more advanced pre-constructed deck thing, whereas it maybe doesn't feel like there's the pathway from the beginner games that are Jumpstart all the way to building, like, your standard deck, building Commander. It feels like it's maybe missing a little bit of that, because building a Commander deck from scratch when you have no foundation of, like, a pre-con to build it around is a tough prospect. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.